Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SANS Threat Analysis Rundown. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Welcome. If this is your first time, this is a monthly broadcast focused on threats. My name is Katie Nichols. I'm an instructor for SANS for the Cyber Threat Intelligence class, also Director of Intelligence at Red Canary, and I'll be joined in just a few minutes by Tyrone E. Wilson of Cover 6 Solutions. Really excited to bring him in today. And if you've joined us before in previous SANS webcasts, in the STAR webcast specifically, you'll know we focus on threats from a lot of different angles. That's our goal, is to kind of bring you different voices. This is what we try to do, different voices from around the community to make sure you're up to date on what's happening with threats. And I'm really excited to bring in Tyrone soon because he's going to give us a bit of a different perspective today. I often hear from threat intel analysts or people who track threats that they don't feel as technical. Maybe you're at the strategic level focusing on geopolitics, and Tyrone's going to set you up today with basically some simple ways you can set up your own lab and become the adversary. There's no better way to understand a threat, I think, than by becoming that threat yourself. So that's our slightly different take on the threat today, but monthly series. So if this is your first one, welcome. We have a bunch on our webpage you can check out. So our agenda today, I'm going to start off by giving you a quick rundown of some interesting threat-related news items, things that caught my eye and my take on that. Then I'll pass it over to Tyrone, and we have a live demo, folks. So start praying to the demo gods now. He'll dive deep into thinking about how to get into that adversary mindset, how you can use some really simple tools to get started with that. And then I'll bring it home, wrap up for the day, give you a couple takeaways for your Wednesday or Thursday. What day is it? It's all the same day, it doesn't matter. So let's get started with a rundown. And yeah, there are a lot of different, summaries, SANS news bites. Here are a couple of things in threat-related news that I found particularly interesting. And all of these items are references in the end of the slides that, yes, we are going to post a PDF of the slides, so no worries. And yes, this is being recorded. On that note, if you have any questions at any point, you can use that Q&A panel in Zoom. Just go ahead and ask those questions, and as many questions as we can get to at the end, we certainly will get to those. So it is August 20th. My calendar informs me it is indeed Thursday, not Wednesday. Here are a couple things that I've seen in recent weeks. You might have noticed last week, I believe, a pretty significant report on Russian malware came out from NSA and FBI. And I'm going to butcher this. Droverub, I don't know how to say it, but in short, it's some pretty advanced Linux malware. There are a couple things that I found really interesting about this report. First off, it came out jointly from NSA and FBI. And I was chatting with my colleagues about what's the first thing that we always look at with these reports. And I said, well, the thing I always think about is, well, why did they release this? From a geopolitical standpoint, is NSA, is FBI, is the US government trying to message to the Russian government? The other interesting thing, this was Linux malware, which I can probably count on my hand the number of people I know in this community who track Linux malware. Not something everyone tracks every day. So pretty interesting advanced malware. Definitely worth taking a look at that report, diving into that one. On the Russia theme, the Droverub malware was attributed to GRU, Russian intelligence. There have been a couple different reports lately coming out about more broadly Russian disinformation operations. You might be aware this week, kind of the 5th installment in that Mueller report came out, detailing a lot of the information around the DNC hack, so that's certainly worth a read. Department of State actually put out an interesting report recently on Russian disinformation as well. A nice overview, that's linked in the references. And actually, Google, if you don't follow the Google Threat Analysis group, they do like a quarterly roll-up of a lot of the takedown operations they've done. Google is parent over YouTube as well. So that's another interesting one. Again, on the same theme, we're seeing a lot of Russian disinformation efforts, and it's August, US election in November. So that's something I'd recommend everyone kind of keep an eye on in coming months. Moving on to more crimeware focus. I know the state-sponsored stuff is always kind of fascinating and fun, but Emotet. Big news this week came out that actually for months, defenders had been sharing a kill switch for the malware Emotet, that essentially if you put this on a machine, Emotet wouldn't fire. It was exploiting a vulnerability in Emotet. So that was pretty interesting news, came out this week. On the Emotet front, also Emotet is back. You hadn't noticed that. Emotet is one of those interesting families that they'll often kind of go in waves. And though they didn't necessarily go away completely, you know, from April to July timeframe, they were definitely a little quieter, but they're certainly back. And I advise everyone, even if the state-sponsored stuff is maybe more fun for you, criminally focused actors, adversaries, malware like Emotet, incredibly important and affects a lot of organizations. So make sure you're checking for Emotet. Lots of great people on Twitter who give tips on that. And last but not least, I wanted to draw your attention to a new framework out of MITRE. You've probably heard of MITRE ATT&CK, which is sort of an adversary-focused framework of different behaviors. But you might not be familiar. There's a new framework out that focuses a lot on active defense and deception called MITRE SHIELD. So it might be interesting at sort of the defensive response to attack, which is more of an adversary focus. I wanted to call that out. You know, I previously worked at MITRE on attack, and slightly different team and different focus, but for any defenders, worth checking out, might be of interest to you. So there's a rundown. Again, not everything in the news, but a couple things that I found pretty interesting in this month of August. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. We'll do the screen share switcheroo. I'm gonna hand things over to Tyrone E. Wilson. I am so excited to have Tyrone here. He's the founder and president of Cover6 Solutions. I'll let him tell you all more about himself, but he is awesome. He does so much in the community. He founded this company. He has a side gig, I believe, as the director of cybersecurity. He organizes one of the biggest groups in the nation, a ton, thousands, 100,000s of people who are, you know, part of DC Cyber Professionals Group. He is at B-Sides, different conferences, sharing knowledge. And so I'm so excited to welcome Tyrone. Tyrone, take it away. Let me go ahead
Everyone,
and mute you.
That's
there you
okay,
go.
Yeah. That's totally fine. Katie, thank you for having me, the SANS team. Thank you everyone in attendance today. I want to thank you all for being there. I am Tyrone Wilson, the founder and president of Cover6 Solutions. Yes, yes, yes. I am having a ball these days. Very, very busy, but that's totally fine. I do it for the people. So we're going to talk about how to become the adversary, which specifically focuses on how you can create a lab environment with a focus on defense to also practice your offensive skills, and then you can use both sets of skills to become a better overall professional. A little bit about me, as it was mentioned before, I'm almost in my 25th year in the military, in the Army to be exact. I was fortunate enough to be a part of some really great units where the focus was either network defense for, you know, all of the Army, done that for 2 deployments in Iraq. Totally not the best of times, being in a Chinook or a Black Hawk, running vulnerability assessments on every single fob in Iraq, but you know, those experiences taught me a lot. I've also had the privilege to work with some really, really great individuals. So building those networks, building those relationships have been near and dear to me, and I cherish all of it. I do organize a meetup group called the DC Cybersecurity Professionals, 7,800 people. Definitely check us out. I started that because as I was, you know, running network defense in all of these various locations, I had a bright idea to start educating the masses in hopes that it would trickle up and make our jobs easier. Well, I severely underestimated how much people would need some help. The group exploded and I just ran with that. I have a lot of passion for teaching individuals what I know. I know firsthand what knowledge in tech and information security can do for you. It can literally change lives. So that's what I try to do. With the success of the meetup group, I was able to start a company called Cover6 Solutions, where we do vulnerability assessments, penetration testing, and some training. I enjoy being entrenched in the community, you know, giving presentations here and there, sitting on boards, and things of that nature. Before we begin, I just have to put this disclaimer out, just really quick, right? I will show you some things at a high level. Don't get yourself sent to jail. Only scan what you're specifically able to scan. You will learn some things, but this is just in its rawest form, a means to create a lab in addition to what you may already have on your laptop. All right, so during my years of organizing all of these meetups, doing some mentorship and training future pen testers and SOC analysts, I always get the same question from so many people. And that question is, how do I get hands-on experience, right? There's this problem that I want to try to solve to where people will come up to me and say, I can't get a job because I don't have experience, but I can't get experience because I don't have a job. Well, I am trying to always identify ways to solve a problem. This is one of those ways. So once I show you this, once you see this, like you literally have no more excuse anymore. It's time to go get it. And by go get it, right, one of the frameworks, and I feel like everyone should have some type of framework or testing methodology that they like to go by. One of my favorites is the PTES, or the Penetration Testing Execution Standard. I use this with nearly everything, even with BD meetings or calls with strangers, right? You want to have that setup. You want to conduct some passive reconnaissance, active reconnaissance, identify vulnerabilities. For attackers and defenders, those first 4 stages will primarily be the same. Once you identify vulnerabilities, then it's going to branch off. So the defenders will attempt to fix those vulnerabilities. Attackers will attempt to exploit those vulnerabilities. And since we are here today to do both, then you can do both at the same time. Trust me, it will definitely improve your skill set. Then there's the exploitation process and the post-exploitation process. And then of course, right, the part that some of us hate is the reporting. Trust me, it's not that bad. If you approach your reporting like you do studying for an exam, and that means in as less words as possible, then you'll be fine. Trust me, I don't want to read a 100-page report either, but in the summary, if you can just tell me what happened and I can identify what happened as quickly as possible with some indicators of compromise, I'm fine, right? I've been reading reports for years, and it really, really needs to grab me in the first 3 or 4 sentences, or I may just put it to the side. All right, so let's talk about this lab environment at a high level, right? I try to stay as product agnostic as I possibly can, but we're going to talk about some ways to set this all up and at a very low cost. Normally, if you have been following any of my presentations before, I normally talk about how you can set up a lab environment with just your laptop, right? You get a hypervisor of your choice, normally VMware Fusion or VirtualBox or something like that, and then you would install some additional virtual machines, primarily an attack machine, and then there's a machine that you are attacking, most likely Metasploitable 2, or you could have your custom Windows 7 or custom Ubuntu machine. All of that is totally free, right? So even if you don't want to pay the money that we're talking about, that we will talk about today, you can still do just about everything here with just a laptop. The one thing that I didn't mention is the network monitoring and the intrusion detection piece, right? For that, we're going to focus on a tool called Security Onion. Doug Bergs and the team at Security Onion do a really great job of keeping the tool up to date. There is a newer version out, the Security Onion 2.0. We're not going to talk about 2.0 tonight because I haven't had a chance to evaluate it just yet with my busy schedule. But if you go to the GitHub page on Security Onion, you'll see the latest ISO there. I think it's 1.16.04. So you can also do it on your laptop. But the focus today is on how we can do this with DigitalOcean. On the right-hand side of the slide right here, it's just a quick script along with some instructions on how to get everything set up. And it takes a good 20 minutes or so. If you happen to run into any issues, I am a fan of you having issues because that's how you learn. And you can learn what some of the troubleshooting techniques are, right? You can do this locally, but having this on the cloud allows you to really expand the amount of resources and hard drive space that you will need. Some additional cloud platforms out there that are really good are AWS, of course, Google Compute, and Microsoft Azure. So to get everything started, after you run this setup script, if anyone has ever used DigitalOcean before, there is a user data portion after you create your droplet. You just add this script to the droplet, and then upon creation, I think it takes about a couple minutes or so, Security Onion will be installed for you. At that point, you know, since you're familiar with snapshots, you want to create a snapshot so you don't have to run this script again. And then now you can just always use that image in case you need to keep going with another droplet. Another thing about me is that I have a teach you, show you, involve you style. So the very first time that I introduce it to you, it's just me talking about it. Then I'll provide a demo, which is the show you. And then the involve you is me expecting you to at least attempt what I just showed you. And then if you happen to have any issues, I want you to try to learn how to work through those issues, right? Either through research or asking someone. Give it a shot on your own, you know, because it's gonna just help you. Again, so ultimately, why are we doing this? Again, this is my nod to Sneakers, which is a movie nearly 30 years ago. It came out, you know, and one of my favorite scenes there is where they talk about how it's all about the information, right? This was 30 years ago, so imagine how important the information is now. And if you can learn to gather information, either passively or actively, and if you can learn how to defend that information, then you can go really, really far in this industry. So before we get to the demos, just a couple more slides, and one is the extra credit. So as we're doing all of this, or as you're doing all of this, right, I want you to think about how you feel setting up a lab. I can assure you that if you struggle to get through 30 minutes to an hour of building a lab and troubleshooting, you may struggle more in the future. I know for me, a good 3, 4, 5 hours nonstop is nothing. And I know I should probably tone it back, but I love it. As you're doing this, you'll start to develop techniques, and you'll notice there will be things that you'll do over and over and over again, like connecting to the VPN, running a number of automation tools, some scripts, so you can learn how to automate all of that and even attempt to automate the exploitation process. You could start with some Metasploit resource files if you want to go there, but then you should also learn how to create and run scripts on your own. And then you should learn how to exploit machines, get your scripts installed and able to run on the machine that you just exploited, run it, and then literally watch yourself do all of that with your favorite protocol analyzer. I started doing this, I'd say maybe 2003, 2004. In the Army, I reclassed to be a 25 Bravo for all the folks that are in the military. That is the information security infosec specialist. My very first unit out of the military, my reserve unit, was what's called an IOC, an Information Operations Command. So if there's anyone from the EMI Northeast IOC watching right now, shout out to you all. But as I joined that unit, they didn't issue me a weapon. They issued me a laptop, gave me a bunch of documentation, said, go learn how to watch yourself, hack yourself. I've been in love ever since. I saw the things that I can do from that. And I feel like I've been trying to teach the world ever since. The defensive portion of all of this, right? I touched on it just a second ago, but everything that you will do from an attack perspective, you can capture that with either Wireshark, or you can use TCP dump. And then for your enumeration, you can use tools or custom tools like Scapy. And essentially what you want to try to do is try to be as granular as possible. So even if it's just something simple like an NVT scan, you should capture that in Wireshark, label that PCAP file, NVT scan, and then upload it to your security onion tool so you can see what that traffic looks like. And both of the tools that we're going to talk about later, which is Tabana, which is essentially Wireshark on steroids, and then Squirt, which is your IDS. So now you'll be able to see what portions of that NVT scan kicked off an IDS alert. Same for the brute forcing, exploitation, post-exploitation. One of the reasons why I feel like this is near and dear to me is that, you know, I've been in the OSCP labs for years. I've taken the exam twice. I'm gonna take it again in less than 2 or 3 weeks. But I always think about, you know, while I'm in the labs attempting to exploit these machines, you know, my evil genius kicks in and your evil genius should kick in as well. And you should say to yourself, what does this really mean, right? This entire process of not knowing what this machine is or what it does, to identifying, you know, and going through that whole attack methodology, which is identifying the host, identifying all the ports on that host, identifying all the services on that host, identifying all the vulnerabilities, and then, you know, we talk about that pivot point that, you know, I spoke of earlier. Upload that PCAP to Security Onion, analyze that traffic, rinse and repeat, do it over and over and over again. Before we get to the demos, again, I want to make sure I add that in there. Thank you, Katie and the SANS team for having me. This is how you can connect with me. I'm Tyrone Wilson 21 on just about every social media platform. Company, Cover 6 Solutions. Definitely go check us out. If you have any questions, comments about what we do or our training, let me know. So that was the teach you portion, right? So let's go to the show you portion, right? So let me close this. I will start.
As you get set up, I just wanted to highlight a few awesome things that you hit on. Like, I love that you talked about identifying what something really is. Like I face this, my students face this as well. I've done it myself. Like I'm doing an exercise and I'll be like, yeah, APT get whatever, like git clone, and I don't actually understand what's happening in any of that. So I love that about what you said, Tyrone. And I think that's so, so important, that people understand like what they're actually doing. So just wanted to call that out. So I'll turn it back over. I love live demos. Go live demo.
Cool. All right. So, you know, there will be a number of things that, you know, you go through quite often, right? And normally when I get to my Kali Linux machine, it's the same thing over and over and over again, right? So I'll either type in VPN 1 or VPN 2, or even from, you know, the terminal on my Mac, I can do something like just type in attack, and it will automatically log me into my attack machine that's in the cloud. Or I'll type in something like Splunk, and it'll go to my Splunk machine, or Onion, and it'll log into my Onion machine. And this is because in the back end, you know, you can create some aliases, and I hope my aliases, yeah, so I have a bunch of, I'm just making sure the wrong things don't show. So I have some aliases. You can take a look at them to help me get started. You definitely don't want to lose your alias file once you get used to it. But there'll be some things like, you know, setting up your buffer overflow for practice, doing a remote desktop into your lab machine, or doing things like setting up a Python web server. You know, there'll be things you'll do over and over and over again, and it'll just become a lot easier. Like I have one for a multi-handler. So I just type in multi, it runs a resource file or RC script. My multi-handler will start up, and I have a listener already ready to go. So as you start to create these aliases, it's going to end up saving you time as you start to do this over and over and over again. Same with Wireshark. But essentially what you want to do is, even if it's just from your local machine, you will want to run Wireshark, create a capture filter in Wireshark, and have this capture filter only capture the traffic from one host to another host, which is your attack host and your target host. Again, it's real high level. Provided we had extra time, I would love to show you in detail how we go about doing this. But basically, it's host. I'm just putting in a random IP address, and, or you can do and another host and an IP address. Right? Start capturing traffic to and fro. Now with your Kali Linux machine, you run through that process of the attack methodology. And as you go step by step, record those PCAPs, save the PCAP, export the PCAP, and then upload it to your Security Onion tool. Little thing about Security Onion, I do have an instance running locally, have a couple of instances running in the cloud. They exist, it's there. So the cool thing about it is that it is an IDS intrusion detection system that, as I mentioned, and then also pretty much a Wireshark on steroids. The first tool will be Tabana, right? And Tabana essentially shows your everything in your network traffic, but at a graphical level. For those who have never used a SIM tool before, this is your very first introduction to a SIM tool. The longer you have it running, the more that you will start to collect. You can add filters, right? Maybe you can do something like show me everything where the source IP is the IP address of your attack machine. Hit save, save that as a filter. Now it will only show the traffic from your attack machine. It's a good way to transition into doing some threat hunting, right, if you haven't done that before. Another cool thing about Security Onion is that it has TCP replay installed. So you have the option to import PCAP files or replay PCAP files, and it makes a difference to how you do that. If you import a PCAP file, then it will have the original timestamps of the traffic. If you replay the PCAP file, it's going to have the timestamps of the time you replayed it. So what I like to do is capture all of the network traffic that I'm doing, and then I will either upload it with either a web shell or use, a GUI-based SSH tool like CyberDuck, so you can easily transfer PCAP files back and forth, and then maybe transition into a tool like Squirt, and then Squirt will show me what it triggered on. And some of the cool things about this is that now you can learn about IDS alerts, right? You can practice looking at additional PCAP files. Also in Squirt, I'm just going to try to find it right now, is that you will also see I'm just going to try to find one, is that it will also show you the snort signature that it alerted on. So if you want to practice using snort signatures or learning how snort signatures work, find them in tons of articles and posts online. You can transition into perfecting your snort alerts as well. So to wrap it all up, to show you that process, we normally start with an NVT scan of your environment. Let that run. I normally open up another window, maybe start Sparta, which is one of my favorite tools. Sparta has the, I'm just putting in random IP addresses right now. Sparta will kick off all ports and services, instance of Nmap scan. It has HTTP screenshot built in, so you don't have to go and actually look at that website. It has some brute forcing built in with Hydra. And what you would want to do is capture that traffic. Also, there are some vulnerability scanning tools that you can use. So you should know what a vulnerability scan looks like over the wire, and actually import that vulnerability scan and see if it kicks off any alerts. All right. Katie, how are we doing on time?
We are doing great on time. So I'll just jump in. One question, like, how did you get started? Like, how did you even know to go download Security Onion? Or like how, if you aren't comfortable in command line, how would you suggest people get started with this stuff, or just like do it?
Whew. All right. So I actually, on the website, I wrote an article called The Home Lab Setup, which talks about all of those different phases, and it also has some educational resources. And the way that I like to approach it is, right, you want to start with, I guess, the techniques in its rawest form. So you'll need some type of network monitoring. So I look up what network monitoring is and find a popular network monitoring tool that may be free, and go to YouTube, watch a demo, and then attempt to install it in my lab environment. I will try to identify another one, see which one I like to use the most, get really, really comfortable with it to a point where I feel comfortable teaching it. After the network monitoring, then there's an enumeration network mapping tool, as we know, IMAP. So I watch videos on IMAP, learn how to use IMAP to a point where I want to teach it. But then, you know, I kind of learn towards the attack methodology that we just talked about. How do I use IMAP to only find just the host? How do I use IMAP to only scan ports? How do I use IMAP to find vulnerabilities? How do I use IMAP to find service versions? Perfect that until it becomes easy. So now when you go to type in IMAP-v-svc-p-on a target, right? None of that is confusing to you because that's something that you do all the time.
Yeah. So we had someone pop into
Sure.
chat. It looks like you might have done NBST scan instead of
Yeah. I noticed that. I was rushing through it.
Oh,
it's NBT scan.
You did that on purpose, and our eagle-eyed attendees caught it. But yeah. I mean, that's realistic. Like I typo commands like every 10 minutes, right? And then like part of learning is like, oops, I typoed. Why isn't this running? Troubleshooting that process. Yeah. So
or I could
something
just
you learn.
Use an alias with one of my other favorite tools, auto recon, and then auto recon will just. Any other questions?
Let's see. We got one. Let's see. So if everyone can post in the Q&A, that's awesome. But I'll try to get the chat too. Lots of questions coming in. This is awesome. So one question is if you have a set of like adversary simulation techniques that you use to test defenses, learn SIM. So on the adversary simulation or maybe emulation side, anything there? I got one too, but I'll let you go.
I know what you're going to say.
You know what I'm going to say. You know where I was, right?
Yeah, so I was going to actually segue that for you, right? So there is a framework out there where you can learn about the different types of attacker techniques that are out there. And then you can either learn to emulate those on your own, or you can find a company that specializes in that and may already have something that can help you with that. Katie, would you know anything about that?
No, absolutely. So yeah, I was going to recommend, so I work for Red Canary, as I mentioned, and my teammates have an awesome open source tool called Atomic Red Team. That's like tiny little tests you can get started with. You know, I like, as an Intel analyst defender, like I wrote about techniques like run DLL32 and all these lull bins. And then the first time I actually used one, I was like, oh, that's what it does. Like, it's so funny because I think a lot of us are in that place. So yeah, you know, someone chiming in, yeah, MITRE ATT&CK. And I was previously on that team. You know, that's a great place to start to understand adversaries too. So yeah, and there are companies that do that. Got some questions of like, how do you know, train up people on this? You know, like how do you learn? Obviously, SANS does training, Cover 6, you do training. In terms of like free things, someone pasted in a link to your blog. You have a bunch of blogs. I'll drop that one in there. Breaking into cybersecurity. Are there any other resources you recommend? We'll have all your slides with those references, but any key references or resources you'd recommend that are free that people can teach themselves?
I'll probably just start at the top right now. IPsec on YouTube. It's an amazing resource. What he does is he records himself hacking into retired Hack the Box machines. Some of them go from really easy to very, very complicated. So I literally watch a video almost every morning and then a video before I go to sleep. Not necessarily to learn the techniques, but primarily to learn the thought process that he has as he starts to identify, you know, vulnerabilities and ways to attack different platforms and different pieces of software. Let me stop this game.
Nice. I think I just dropped the Yep, I think I just dropped the IPsec reference in YouTube in there. And what I'm also going to do, if for you all at home who are like, oh, there's so many good resources, I'll put those all in the slides that I'll make sure those are all in the slides for you all. Yeah, so that was that link in YouTube.
Yeah, so I was
in the chat.
There are a bunch of resources. Like I said, I was trying to stay product agnostic, but there are tons. Nahamsec, IPsec, Cyber Mentor, Cyber, Udemy, Try Hack Me, right? Anything where you can get some hands-on experience, that is definitely the route to go.
Yeah, and there's a great comment that came in, like, from someone who mentors a lot of junior people, newer people to the fields, like putting this on your resume, right? Under experience. You know, you mentioned, how do you get into this field? How do you get started? How do you get an entry-level job if you don't have a security job already? And yeah, someone in chat recommended putting this under professional development. So,
yes,
you know, like writing about how you created your home lab and you attacked yourself and monitor that in Wireshark, and then being able to answer questions, right? So have you done that at all? Is it something you advise people to do?
Yes, so one of my number one resources, especially on the defensive side, Brad Duncan, the Malware Traffic Analysis website.
Yeah.
An amazing resource. Even if you're following malware_traffic on Twitter, almost every day Brad will put out something related to how you can use Wireshark to analyze malware.
Yeah, I just dropped that. He's awesome.
Which leads us to, in Security Onion, there are already pre-made PCAP files that you can analyze in replay. And one of my favorites that's there, since we mentioned it already, is the Trickbot malware from 2018 is there. So what you can do is replay that track. Like if you have no idea what it means, you could literally start from scratch and teach yourself to be an analyst. The Trickbot malware and PCAP, the Trickbot PCAP is there. Go and replay it. It will tell you that it will reference December 7th, 2018. And then if you have no idea what it means, then you can just run through that process. Google Trickbot, learn what it is, what it does, identify what the indicators of compromise are. Use Tabana and Squirt to see if any of those IP addresses and such are in the tool now. They will be. And then now you can go and analyze the associated IDS alerts. And I can assure you, if you tell an employer that you don't have any experience, but I analyze Trickbot PCAP for fun, right, on the side, and you can explain this process, you're going to get the job, right? Because I would even want to hire you, right?
I mean, I don't even analyze Trickbot PCAP for fun. I might read Trickbot reports for fun, but no, that's a great point. And like Trickbot is everywhere. And so you can look at that and then go from like, and this is where I kind of bring in my threat intel background. If you can go from that packet capture, go look up that IP. We've talked in previous webcasts on, you know, pivoting through passive DNS, like go see, can you find a report or blog post on that IP? How is it associated with Trickbot? Like, that's awesome. Yeah. And, you know, I guess one question I have for you, Tyrone, is as you're getting started doing this stuff, what do you do when you hit roadblocks? Like, I get mad at Linux command line a lot. What can you recommend to people who are like getting a stupid error? How do you push through that?
What's a roadblock? No, I'm just joking.
No, it's all roadblocks some days, right?
I listened to, you know, Eric Thomas, the motivational speaker, and he talks about like your journey as like a pregnancy, right? Like it's going to be hard sometimes. It's going to hurt, but keep pushing, right? Mm-hmm. You have something building up inside of you that's going to be great as long as you keep pushing, right? The outcome of that is going to be amazing, something that you can look back on for years and years and years to come. So either find a mentor who may or may know some additional details about that. Whatever you're looking for, if you were to just put that word in hashtag that in Twitter, I'm sure you can go and find people talking about that for years and years, right? So
I mean, I
the
do that.
resources there.
Hashtag Emotet.
I
Yeah,
do it
hashtag
now.
Emotet gives me everything.
Yeah, I do it
Just to
now.
follow up, who was the motivational speaker that you mentioned?
Eric Thomas. He's the one that you may have known him from You Have to Want It More Than You Want to Breathe. You want to be successful more than you want to breathe.
Nice. All right. I just dropped a link to Eric Thomas in the chat. Good questions. So many things to dive into. Everyone has questions. This is so much fun.
This
Keep
is
the
good.
questions
I
coming.
actually love questions. I love them.
Excellent. So we got one. You mentioned trying to be product agnostic, but let's be honest, there are products out there. So one question, have you ever considered using Splunk in a lab environment? Have you used that? It has some cool dashboards. Maybe it's a little easier. What are your thoughts? Like, I know Splunk has a free version, right? Have you used Splunk versus like the Elk Stack, which is sort of another SEM-like tool that you mentioned, Tabana?
Of course. So we actually do have a Splunk server up, splunk.cover6.training. And it's just a little treat that I do for the students in my SOC analyst class. You know, I kind of foot the bill for this server, and I'll give them an account on there, add them as a user so they can learn how to use Splunk on their own.
Nice.
Splunk University has some free resources that will teach you how to use Splunk. And then we also have the Splunk Boss of the SOC 2.0 set up there, which is a Splunk capture the flag environment that I set up for whoever wants it. Splunk 3.0 just came out, but I haven't set it up yet. And if anyone goes to the Splunk site, yes, I know my license. My developer license has just expired. I think yesterday too, so
of course.
it's cool.
So I just dropped in, free Splunk courses. I dropped in link to fundamentals and then Boss of the SOC. I think we actually have one of the Boss of the SOC founders listening in. So Boss of the SOC, that's a great, I think they've done like worldwide ones lately. So that's another great, great resource.
And it's free. So the first 500 megs is free.
Nice.
You can actually have this data input sync to your Splunk machine. Like your entire, like you can literally run a SOC from home, right? Just by practicing on your home network. Ultimately, I want to do it from a boat. So if you see me streaming.
From a boat?
Remotely from a boat, yes.
Satellite internet is not going to hold up there. I don't know. But. So we got a couple questions in on the malware side. So I'm dropping a link in. Someone asked, like, where do I get malware samples? I know there's a GitHub site called the Zoo that has a whole bunch. So caveat, these are malicious. It's malware. If you have that link.
It is malware.
But are there any other malware sources that you like? You mentioned malware traffic analysis.
Yeah.
Others.
I can't remember the book right now, but it was really good. Malware analysis. It might be the cookbook.
Yeah, let me.
I think it's the malware traffic analysis cookbook. I haven't really put a lot of focus on analyzing malware lately, but you can sandbox that using a tool like Cuckoo.
Yep.
Right. If you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a question on like malware lab topology. So Cuckoo is a great resource if you're getting started with malware analysis.
Yeah.
Cuckoo, free sandbox.
Yeah.
And we should, as we're talking about malware, like VirusTotal is a great resource to search, but please don't upload your malware into VirusTotal because then everyone can see it, including adversaries. But that's a rant for another day. But in terms of setting up a lab, like you could just set up a VM, put your malware in a VM, right? And then install Cuckoo, free sandbox, and you can run it in a sandbox. Download some things from the Zoo, run the malware. Maybe you do it in security onion so you can kind of watch your Wireshark traffic too. That'd be kind of fun. So yeah, malware, we could do a whole nother webcast on malware, but a few tips there. Sweet. Let's see. So talking about pen testing training. So you mentioned OSCP. Could you tell us a little bit about like what kind of pen testing training, how do you feel like you best learn pen testing or red teaming?
Okay, so again, like most things, just start from scratch, right? And the best way is to either use an OS that's made for that, like Kali Linux or Parrot OS, Or what you can do is download, you know, an Ubuntu machine and create your own custom attack machine. Then you'll want to get something like Metasploitable 2 or Metasploitable 3 that you can install right on your laptop to start attacking that machine. There are also resources online at, you know, Hack the Box, VulnHub, that have resources that you can download and start attacking. And then, you know, you can start aiming for certifications. I actually recently started going through that process. Learn Security with the EJPT, they have a series as well. What's today, the 20th? So on the 27th, I'll be taking the CEH Practical. And this is all in as a means to assess my skills for the OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional exam, which, you know, there's some debate on whether it's a beginner level pentesting certification or not. In all honesty, to be real with everyone, I would say it is, right? I would honestly say there's so much that you need to know to be a really good pen tester. And I feel like the OSCP, although difficult for those that are new to the industry, it is very, very crucial to have a really good understanding of all the techniques that they would teach you there.
Yeah, I've heard from a bunch of people, you know, that just studying for OSCP is like a learning experience in and of itself. Like, even if you don't get the certification, and I have talked to so many amazing people who have not passed it.
Yeah,
and like, it's so hard, right? I have not taken it, not my thing, but you know, I think just the like process, like you've shown today, like set up Kali, like try some scanning, see what it looks like.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And honestly, it was one of the best things I ever did, just to, you know, after years of being in the labs. Just recently, I was able to clear my schedule, buckle down. So from sun up to sundown, basically midnight, you know, I'm in the OSCP labs. It will totally make you a better defender as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that and with that. And yeah, it's really, it can be tough, that initial like, oh God, like I've never used Linux before, you know, I'm used to a GUI. I'm not used to the command line, but I think getting over that, like, and just little by little, you know, the other day I was trying to code something and I didn't know how to do it. And I got the error and I Googled it and I looked at Stack Overflow and someone said, great, you copied and pasted something from Stack Overflow, you're a real coder now. Like we all, I think it's this learning process of like trying something, it failed, learn it.
Right.
So,
right.
Absolutely.
I did put a lot of resources on the home lab setup article on the website. So Linux Survival is a really good option to learn Linux if you just want to just start from scratch.
Awesome. I will make sure, and like we've had shared so many links, I'm copying and pasting those, and we'll put those out in the PDF for everyone. And thank you all. This audience is awesome. Like you all are just sharing things with each other. So best audience ever.
Yes.
So we had a question come in sort of on the more technical side. So how do you find the IP of a specific machine on a LAN? Like for example, the computer on someone's LAN at home is one of many, and the public IP address might be different due to NAT. How do you go about that? Like, how do you find a specific IP on a LAN? Do you have a tool, or just like, is it on command line? Any thoughts there?
So on my home network, I mean, there's quite a few tools that I run. One of my favorites, because I'm running a Mac, is called IP Scanner Pro. And what that is it will just constantly, you know, send probes out on my network to let me know what devices are connected to my laptop. I talk about how to set up your router at home. So you should statically assign all of your devices. My range is from 0 through 99. I statically assign all of my home devices there. .101 through 199 is my guest network. I do that by design. So if anyone joins my network, they'll get an IP address of .101. So if I'm looking through Wireshark and I see an IP address of .107, I know that there's 7 guests on my network. I start with 101 by design. If I'm home alone, I know that I should never see a .100 anything, because I statically assigned everything. And then for my lab, it's 200 and above. But what I do is I spend the time, I go in, I have a custom MAC address scheme that I like, 0690565116. And then the last 3 digits is the IP address. So I go and do that from 54 times, so 200 to 54. I go and manually input that into my router. So when I need to create a virtual machine for my lab, only thing I have to do is assign it a MAC address. And I already know what IP address it's going to get because I took the time to enter those settings into my router.
Nice. So statically assigning, so you're very organized. It's kind of funny because organization doesn't seem that exciting, but you're organized and you know exactly what IPs, also in terms of security, what should be on your network and what shouldn't. Like that's an awesome approach. So good advice there. Excellent. All right, we are coming up. Anything last you wanted to show in your demo Tyrone, before we switch back and I wrap things up?
Not necessarily to show, but maybe just some words of advice, some words of encouragement to everyone. You know, like you can be whatever you want in this industry. Like I've seen it. You put forth the time and the effort, right? You can do it. Have confidence in yourself, right? You have to believe it first before anyone else can believe it. You know, just having this conversation with you right now, doing a SANS webcast was like a goal of mine. Probably would have never considered that as someone that was new to the industry many moons ago, you know, so just be like, it can happen, right? So just push through all that. And if anyone wants to like chat it up, geek it out, go over, you know, different strategies, you know, my DMs are always open. I'll always be here to help however I can.
That's awesome. What a great note to finish on. Thank you so much, Tyrone. This has been my favorite webcast so far because it's been so interactive. And honestly, my pleasure to have you and SANS' pleasure to have you here. So let's start to wrap up because we are almost at the top of the hour. It's been a fun hour. Just to reiterate what Tyrone just said, don't get intimidated by this stuff. You know, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, especially if you're maybe like on the Intel side or you're newer to this field. Don't get intimidated. Just dive in, try something. And the theme here is that, you know, maybe on the Intel side, if you're on the threat side, just reading reporting, get your hands dirty, because one of the best ways that you can figure out and get in that adversary mindset is to try it yourself. So hopefully you have a bunch of great tools that Tyrone suggested today. And we had questions. This is being recorded. This was recorded. You can go back and see that from the registration page. And I promise I will take some time this afternoon to compile all these links that we've shared, that you all have shared. So you can go back, and Tyrone, I think, gave you some homework earlier today. So with that, here's some of those references. I promise I'll post those for you. That's all we got, friends. Tyrone, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Please stay well, and we hope to see you next month.
All right.
Bye, all.